Musical Talk, the independent musical theatre podcast at the Edinburgh Fringe. Hello and welcome to Musical Talk. I'm Thos, and that's not short for Thanatos, who, as I'm sure you know, in Greek mythology, is death, the counterpart of life, just one of the many representations of the Grim Reaper in history. Now, you're probably thinking, what's the old man on about? Has he finally lost his old marbles? Or in this case, Elgin marbles? Well, of course no, the answer is not. But today we do have a theme for our programme, and that is death, 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 death. And what you're going to be hearing in today's episode is the second of our looks at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, the largest arts festival in the world, and the musicals which I saw up there. And we'll be getting the insight into several of those, all of which were about death, because death seemed to be a bit of a theme at the Fringe this year. There were several musical-based shows which explored what death meant, and not just solemnly, but also comically or wistfully, life being so much a part of death can be dealt with in so many different ways. And of course, making the observation that death is very much a part of life, I normally mean the last part. But that's not all, because not only will we be listening to shows about death from the Edinburgh Fringe, our old friend Keith Arrowsmith will be presenting a splendid piece about London Road, the verbatim musical at the National Theatre at the moment, which of course is inspired entirely about murder, the least happy form of death, if you can understand what I mean by that slightly unusual sentence. But first, let's get on with Edinburgh 2012. The first show we're going to be looking at makes it pretty plain that it's about death, because we're going to be talking about Bereavement the Musical. It was nominated for Best New Musical at the Fringe and was a genuinely good show. You may remember that we heard a preview about it a few weeks ago. Well, after one of the performances, I gathered up the producer, the composer and several of the people in it, and we had an interesting conversation about what the show meant to them and to the public. So first, let's hear the opening number, which gives you a good idea of what the show's about, and then we'll hear the interview about Bereavement the Musical. And please note, the following conversation does have some explicit references. By the way, that bell you can hear ringing in the background, I'm pleased to say, is not the death knell of somebody. It's not a church bell tolling for somebody's death. It is in fact an enormous canary who happens to be sitting in the room in which I'm recording this, banging his head fruitlessly but with a splendid sense of rhythm against a really amazingly large bell. Do you know, I might have to downscale that cage a bit.
Go through. The stage is open and the players are in full view. There's a part for you and you will have to play it. The script is written, it's just words you've got to say it. And oh, don't think it's not strange. Death will bring you change. You've got another thing coming. You'll be saved once it's been engraved. You've got another thing coming. So bring the lights up and act nothing less than certain, because bereavement never brings the final curtain. It was easy when we looked for a conclusion. Make it easy, never shatter the illusion. Take your bow, face the music. easy just to see what we have come to.
There's a part for you and you will have to play it.
It's bereavement and we've just got to obey it. And oh, you'll learn all the moves. Nobody improves. You gotta know the thing from me. And oh, come and face your crowd. Do the theatre proud. You've got another thing from me.
It's a funny little cabaret we go through.
It's a funny little cabaret, it stars you.
It's a funny little cabaret to stay true.
Funny little cabaret.
Musical talk.
Hello, my name's Martha Bennett. I'm in Bereavement the Musical and I play the vicar.
My name's Richard Bates, and I'm the producer of Bereavement the Musical.
Hi, I'm Jeff Carpenter. I'm one of the co-writers and the composer for Bereavement the Musical.
My name's Joey Akubeze. I am one of the actors in Bereavement the Musical playing Richard.
So we better be talking about Bereavement the Musical, or I've got the wrong people. Now, Bereavement the Musical, I've just seen it. It's fantastic. It's actually... I tell you what really struck me, first of all, is its honesty. It's funny, it's unpretentious, but it's absolutely truthful. So how do you, as a group, because I appreciate we've got producers, creatives and performers here, so you may have different takes on it, but what was the approach that you each took as you found yourself engaging with the process?
Well, I think from a writing perspective, we were always we were looking back at stuff that we've gone through and then giving it to putting it on the stage. So as sort of looking at what we've done, and then sort of 5 years down the line, looking back, I suppose. So in that sense, it's truthful. And then as musical director, I've just been trying to make sure that the actors absolutely get it. And same with Andy as director, definitely trying to just make sure that we can translate it as natural a way as possible.
We did some rehearsal exercises in the week before we came up to Edinburgh, in which we did lots of things talking about grief and bereavement, what it means to us, and some of our experiences of it. And we also did some exercises such as writing a letter to the person in the show who we'd lost. So in my case, writing kind of a posthumous letter to my husband, as a kind of, if I as the vicar could say anything to him, what would I say? What would be my kind of final words to him? And I found that a really helpful exercise.
I think, I suppose, honesty is an interesting word. I think, as producer, I think the most important thing for me was making sure that there was all the facilities there to sort of bring to life what Jeff and Maureen kind of created. And I think we've had to do that in sort of quite an honest theatrical way, because the show is very theatrical, as you'll have seen. It's very stylised.
There's a glitter curtain.
Yeah.
Forgive me, I don't have one of those at home, although I am ambitious in that direction.
Yeah, lovely across the front curtain, the front windows. Yeah. So the way the show is so theatrical and so stylised, I think actually interesting. We kind of have to be very honest to the style of the show in making sure it looks right, because it's the kind of show that I think if it didn't have that razzmatazz to it wouldn't work. The way it sort of uses the musical form as such a point of departure to explore what is quite an alien concept of the musical normally, which is bereavement.
Because, the whole message of Bereavement the Musical is that we don't really... there's all these conventions of bereavement, but we don't really know how to act when we're there. So I obviously came with my own experiences with death, but I tried to really have an open mind to the fact that though that was my experience, it could be a lot more complex or very different in another situation. So I actually sort of looked at each song and tried to almost put it into my own song in the sense that, there are parts where he is laughing to himself, almost at the tragedy, but then also where he really is absolutely heartbroken. Yeah.
Now, got to get on to the big subjects, which is the public. We discussed this when we met before, but with a title like Bereavement the Musical, people are going to have a set of expectations. Mm-hmm. The show sort of confounds that, because it's exploring at the grey edges of what's expected and what you can do. In fact, there's most of the questions about well, so many of the questions are about, are you allowed in speech marks to do this? Mm-hmm. Have you been given license? Are you allowed to put Bereavement the Musical on for the audiences of Edinburgh?
I think it's what I found really interesting is
just speak over it.
Flogging leaflets out on the mile. Quite a lot of people have really sort of got it, and then quite a lot of people have been like, "Oh, is it very sad?" And then loads of other people have been like, "Oh, that sounds really stupid." So no, everyone feels completely different about it. So everyone comes actually with it with completely different expectations, which I found really interesting. Luckily, because this man came from the NHS, I think he's in charge of bereavement counselling on the NHS, and he's done this big write-up on Grief Hub that sort of put people at it's allayed people's fears. And now that we've got nominated for Best New Musical, I think that's also allayed people's fears about it being potentially a sort of one-sided look or irreverent look.
I think that's really interesting what Jeff says. Some people, you go, Bereavement the Musical, and they go, oh no, far too raw for me, this has just happened, I couldn't possibly. But then some people have sort of the polar opposite. It's like, actually, I had someone the other day, it's like, oh, actually, I lost my father 2 years ago. I think that sounds like a really interesting show that I would engage with. Whereas some people do close off completely, and I think that is probably a reflection of how people do have completely different reactions to bereavement when it happens to them in their life.
I mean, bearing in mind you've all been on the mile, have any of you had an absolute no, an angry no?
Oh, loads, yeah.
Doesn't say no. Some, yeah. Some, but I wouldn't say no. Yeah.
So every company has, hello, do you like musicals? No. And then actually I said to someone, hello, do you like musicals? And they went, no. A little pause, looked at my face, and then just burst out laughing, and then just went off with his friends. So yeah, it can be pretty brutal, but
I think the topic as well puts people off. I've had a few people look down at the leaflet that I'm holding and go, I don't think that's appropriate. Yeah. That's not an appropriate subject for a musical. And you kind of think, why not? Why is it taboo? Why is that not okay? It's important, I think, that we're addressing this issue.
There are so many areas that theatre should never go to. Yeah. What a good idea. Wouldn't society be better if we only did the same thing?
Yeah.
I love the public. Oops.
So, some of them it's a bit difficult. I overheard a couple who took a leaflet off another cast member, Jess, who's very petite, very quietly, softly spoken, and they'd taken the leaflet without looking at what it was. As they were walking away from her, looked at the leaflet, and one of them read out Bereavement the Musical, and the other one went, oh, but she looked like such a nice girl. Why is she giving us that leaflet? I couldn't help laughing. I thought, it's okay to talk about it.
Bereavement is also such a natural thing. I mean, it's going to happen if it hasn't happened to all of us at some stage. And if it had been Dismemberment the Musical, I could sort of understand this. But forgive me, bereavement is such a fundamental aspect of the human experience. So you've also had these very positive people saying that they're prepared to sort of, this is actually something they would be happy to explore. The audiences, once you've snared them in, once they're sitting in the auditorium, how have your audiences been reacting? Differently every night? I know the answer to this is always yes, by the way. So
it has been different every night. There's been a couple of nights where a few people have actually stood up, which has been really lovely.
You mean for innovation, not
for little standing
Spat
ovation.
The actors and ran out the
and numbers have been up and down. I'd say overall we've been getting a lot more than most Fringe shows, which is really encouraging. It has been. Some nights people really, really go for it, and also the laughs are always in different places, which is interesting.
Now that's interesting. Have you had laughs in places where you weren't expecting them?
Yes.
I see consensus developing.
Some lines, for example, which I thought people would find that would affect them in a way that would make them feel quite touched or quite kind of sad. For example, there's a line in Will's song that said, how does it go?
That isn't a fond memory of my mum.
Yeah, that isn't a fond memory of my mum who's dead. And there's a slight pause after it. And people in the audience were laughing. And I remember the first time I did it, I was horrified. I was
really?
Oh no.
I was thinking, right from the beginning.
So it was you.
I think it just goes to show that we have completely different preconceptions about how people are supposed to act when they're grieving or going through bereavement. It's really made me question my own judgments on what's appropriate and what isn't.
I actually think the audience, because I think the audience reaction in general has been good. And I think that in reference to your earlier question as to whether we should be sharing this message with Edinburgh, that on the basis of audience reaction that we should.
Yes.
Because even if people have come in apprehensive at the beginning, it seems like by the end, almost unanimously, everyone seems to be enjoying it and take something from it, and particularly people who have experienced bereavement. Like, for example, a lot of our audience has been older people, and they
So
have
for them, it's the sequel, isn't it?
Exactly. Oh my goodness, I almost said exactly. And they've really enjoyed it a lot. So I think for that reason, the fact that people seem to enjoy it very much when they arrive, that people are learning things from it, that it's definitely a message that should be shared with people in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Do people realise that it's very funny, though? You know, 'cause we were saying in a previous conversation, it's a famous fear of laughing at a funeral. The circumstances don't allow for it. There's a certain tension, perhaps if you don't know what the show's going to be about, or whether the tone could be almost in any aspect of the range. Have you noticed a sort of an edginess in the audience, and then the release when they realise they can laugh? Or, I mean, the audience today, for example, was actually quite. I think they were airing more on the emotional. The sadness, actually. It was a much more a tragic audience, I think, in temperament today. Whereas, obviously, there are some good laugh lines in it.
It's weird, I think. When the show was first previewed, it was to a primarily student audience and quite late at night, so they were a little bit drunk.
Yes.
And the laughs were huge there. Whereas here, say, it is different every night. And I think it's interesting that actually the way the show's kind of paced, after the opening number, the first two solo songs are quite gag heavy, and I think some people come into it thinking, oh, this is going to be a funny show. This is bereavement : the musical. But then it comes into Joey's song, which I think is all the more powerful for having come straight out of some of the more funny songs. It really does punch you in the stomach when you realise, okay, this is a pretty much entirely tragic song.
Well, it's about a father talking to his child.
Yeah.
We've got through the first day of the rest of our lives after the death of the mother, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it does pull you up short. I mean, it is quite remarkable. And
I think with that song, it's interesting because I wouldn't call it that tragic. I think it is moving, but I don't think it's tragic because I think it's about Joey, his character, thinking about what he wants to do. And to be honest, the therapy song and the song about Heather Which Follows, that
I'm coming to that in a minute. You can be full on.
Well, I think that they are also actually exactly the same. They're the characters thinking about what should I be doing, or I don't need this, or maybe I should just do this. Maybe this is fine. So actually, they're all the same, and it's just kind of
coping. But
they're just different characters going through the same thing. So I think the fact, Joey's song isn't funny, no, but it's not different. It's not like here's the sad one, here's the funny one. To me, I don't see it in that way.
I actually think all of the songs are both tragic and hopeful.
Yeah.
Because, in terms of my song, there are tragic moments. I mean, this is a child that is going to grow up without his biological, his or her. I'm imagining it as a her, so I'm going to say her.
All children are it's till they grow up. I live alone,
her life without a mother. But then, in some ways, it's also hopeful because, it ends saying we've got through day one. We've done it, the first step has been taken, and we will keep taking the rest of the next steps, and we'll do this.
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting. I think the song about therapy is this woman, sort of businesswoman, saying, I don't need therapy, I'm fine, I'm fine.
She's trying to prove to herself more than anyone else that she doesn't need anything, which is,
And I think that there are that's a comic song, but there are certainly, there are elements of tragedy, how pathetic she is. But I think an audience member can sort of choose to ignore those and just see it as a funny song if they choose. But I think
it's slightly a heightened performance as well, though, isn't she? If I may say, she is a businesswoman from hell.
From the city.
From the 80s. No, definitely.
But if you shuffled your deck of songs differently to the same characters, it would have different effects. Forget it, let's talk about it. There's a teenage boy who's lost, he's 15. He's lost his mother. And his question is it wrong to masturbate? Is it wrong to have a wank? Like, let's bite the bullet, shall we?
It's wrong to have a wank when your mum's dead.
Absolutely. But of course, it's, how long does grief last for different people? That's the question there. But forgive me, if that had been the question you'd asked, but we've got through the first day of the rest of our lives, your mother's dead to your child, but now I'm off to have a quickie. The tone of that song, I think, would have been twisted for the audience.
That's true.
Definitely.
That's a really good point. But of course, I think, well, hopefully, I mean, if you bring it up, I mean, the fact is that father will actually have to go through that at some point himself. And so will the businesswoman.
So it's universal, yeah.
And I think sex drive is something which is infamously, like, all over the place, and some people it can I'm talking specifically with bereavement. It can for some people it absolutely can stop dead, and for some people it can actually go the other way, and it's something that people don't know about at all. And in the case of this character, they basically are just the same, and then it's exacerbated by the fact that all these girls around him are so sort of
the vulnerable man.
The vulnerable man. Oh no! Oh look, it's a poor boy. I need to go and help him. So he actually becomes really attractive because of it. And how guilty must you feel then? Like, my mum's died. I'm now a chick magnet. Like, I mean, that's ridiculous. You imagine how guilty you feel. But these are real things that people have to go through, and it's funny that Joey's song is. Or the vicar's song is like that. I mean, maybe the vicar's going to be meeting new people. I mean, these songs focus on one aspect, and I think luckily, because all the songs are so broad in the spectrum, they all get covered, and you get left with the sense, well, everyone has quite a lot to go through, and what we were hoping for, as I think I said before, is bereavement isn't just the 20-second subplot of a child laying flowers on a grave, because the songs are so broad. The spectrum of songs is so broad that hopefully the audience are left with the sense that not some people's situations of death are tragic, some people's are funny. It's that everyone has a huge amount of different facets that they need to go through when bereavement hits them. Full range, depending on who they are. There's all different aspects of life which are going to be affected, and each of the songs focuses on, one aspect of one character, but actually there's all sorts of stuff going on in the background as well.
I was very, very impressed and indeed touched by the song for the vicar, actually, if I may say. The vicar who's lost her husband, and of course is used to having to say the words at funeral and be a figure of support, whether you're religious or not. The words are supposed to, just the intonation of the tradition in some sense can be helpful. But she's in a situation where she's had to bury her husband, and she now has to carry out funerals, and it's whether she can find in herself that ability to continue to give that support. And there's the question about does she or doesn't she believe. I mean, it was all about the fact that she does have the strength of faith in her case to do so, but I thought that was a really interesting facet to explore.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. I think a lot of, again, another thing is not, which is more known about is, the idea that, again, religious beliefs and faith is something which really gets affected massively. And, what an interesting thing to do about a vicar, because, of course, like the line is, I know all about bereavement, I'm there in times of grief. If only I had known I don't know anything, which may be a little strong, but it's the fact that bereavement's actually hit her for the first time in a real powerful way, and she suddenly realises, oh, hang on, what I was saying before, was that even helpful? And the fact...
Also, we realised that bereavement in a funny kind of way is her livelihood, it's her life, this is her lifestyle. So if she's not able to carry out this service for other people because of what she's been through, she loses her job, she loses her lifestyle, she loses her social position, potentially her friends.
It's all the foundation stones for her,
everything
isn't it?
that is all of her anchors. In effect, she's been cut adrift because if she loses faith, she loses all of these support networks.
Because vicars are the public face of death in some sense. It's not a very nice way of describing it, but of course it is.
So I think for me it was initially, I'm not religious personally, but I found it quite a difficult concept to get my head around, that someone could lose everything. Absolutely everything, and more than even I can comprehend, because I don't have that religious element to my life as well, from one event, from one person dying.
Well, so many people's jobs aren't that, they're fundamental, but they're not so very fundamental. If you're a banker, God bless them, but if you're a banker, then, your life isn't isn't based on the faith system.
Yeah.
Although I suppose there is Mammon, but that's a different game. That's a different discussion for another year, I think. So forgive me, as producer, has this met your expectations? Are you pleased with it? Say yes, obviously. But forgive me. Is it doing what you want it to do?
Absolutely. This is my fourth show at the Fringe, and it's so nice to be out there flyering, be talking to the press, and absolutely believe in a show and know that it's something that not only is it an entertaining hour in a theatre, but it's also it's a show I do kind of strongly feel that people should see, that it does sort of leave you leave you something to take away, and that's why
it's very far from being vacuous. Absolutely. I mean, there's a quotation from another reviewer who says that it should be sort of handed out on the NHS, and you were making reference to the bereavement services earlier. But in a sense, that's true. The message is a little bleak at one level, isn't it? Which is actually that we don't know. Even when you've been through it, you don't necessarily learn anything, because it may be different for you another time. Or...
That's really about me and Maureen. It's just quite funny, really, that you can literally write a musical about bereavement, having gone through it ourselves. And honestly, if someone came up to me and said, my mum's just died, I would not have a clue. I do not know how to deal with it at all. And I think that is a universally felt thing. And it's also can be quite interesting, I think, for an audience to realise that, I assumed that if you've been bereaved, then you'll know. Or now if you watch this musical, we know now how to deal with bereavement, because people would like it to be like that. They'd like there to be various stages.
A backing track for a start. Someone on the piano.
Someone to smear the cracks. But I really think people would like it to be a sort of pattern, there to be a sort of time period, there to be various identifiable stages.
A manual.
Yeah, like stages of grief, and there aren't. They don't exist.
So true.
And I think that can be really helpful. And of course, the last song is actually, because it's in this sort of, Candronair pastiche, and because they have the glittery hats.
By the way, I was getting Jerry Herman hints, I thought, in the last song.
Oh, right. I didn't know who that is, I'm afraid.
I got a touch of Maine.
Oh, right.
Do you know who Jerry Herman is? Get it.
Okay, all right. I'm so sorry. I should do my research. But
hello, Dolly. You're in good company.
Oh, right. Okay, sure. Well, definitely. Yes.
Of course, I was aiming for that. Yes.
No, but that's that sort of vibe. Though I don't know who this guy is, but it's so liberating. Actually, they are all singing it in. It's quite difficult for them to do. They're singing it in a kind of brazenly. What's the word? Brazenly.
Nonchalant?
Brazenly nonchalant, kind of. Yeah, if you like this kind of
brazen nonchalance.
Yeah. It kind of doesn't make any sense, but they're just sort of saying we don't know anything, and just kind of like, we literally don't. And you know what? We're fine with that because no one does, and that's the end of the musical.
I think that actually is quite a comforting message.
Yeah,
to take
it can be.
That is the comforting message of the show. Is no one knows anything.
It's also your song writ large, in a sense, isn't it? Because your song is about getting through the first day, uncharted territory. Even when you've charted the territory once, the shoals are going to be different the next time. So, and everyone else's experience, they're in a different boat, they're in a different starting place. I'm trying to make this nautical, you understand? But you understand what I'm saying, I hope.
Yeah.
So it is genuinely different. So experience, bizarrely, it's a universal experience. It gives you no it doesn't give you any guides for anyone else.
And maybe that's why it's still a taboo. That's why it's still a taboo, because actually, but it is interesting how much we expect to know. Yeah, there you are.
We were talking earlier about how people perhaps expect from this that we'll set out, how to deal with bereavement or some kind of answers to that big question. But we had a woman come up to us after one performance who said she lost her husband and her son very close together, and she's been through counselling, she's read bereavement books, she's spoken to people about it, and this is the best representation she's seen of what it's actually like. And she thanked us for our honesty in saying that we don't know anything, we can't offer you any advice, but this is what we've been through, and just kind of sharing.
And if I can come in with that, I genuinely think that is because of the medium of musical theatre. I think it helps, and I'm not being silly. I genuinely think that might be why, because kind of the messages are the same things she's heard before, undoubtedly. Me and Maureen aren't offering anything that she hasn't heard before and didn't know already. Quite the opposite, in fact. But it's purely because it's staged, because it's sort of the generic insanity of like musical theatre where people are singing a song or burst into song after a little vignette, that it just makes it so much more sense, and this undercurrent of music carries the meaning in such a stronger way.
Well, theatre gives you truth, and theatre gives you intimate connection and engagement. But musical theatre also gives you just a little bit of a sweetness to enjoy it with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And with Jess's song, I think that works really well because she's the character who loses all self-esteem and as a result becomes a slut. And
wearing J-Lo slut.
Wearing the perfume J-Lo slut.
Yes, which you really must manufacture because there's a market.
Sure. Well, we haven't been seen by her agents yet, but at some point. So she's wearing J-Lo slut, and then she becomes a slut. And
that's what it says on the tin.
The music underneath is quite dark and broody and mysterious. It or quite. I don't know what the word is, sad, quite sad. But she's quite angry over the top of it towards the end of the song. And that works really well because it shows the difference between how she feels consciously and maybe subconsciously. And, you can't do that. You can't really do that in straight theatre. And with everything rhyming as well, everything seems to have sort of punch and clarity. It's bizarre, but I think it does get the message across better.
Now, I've got a very bad question. It's a very bad question to ask in front of a composer. I'm going to ask you all to pick your favourite song that you're not in.
Okay.
From the show.
Well, let's start with you.
My favourite song that I'm not in is probably Will's song, Is It Wrong to Have a Wank When Your Mum's Dead? Initially it was because it was so catchy and I thought it was quite cheeky, but then you kind of see the layers beneath
got a bit of a
this
pull, is it?
Yeah. You see beneath those kind of initial layers, and you think, actually, this is a really serious issue that nobody addresses. One of the lines in his song is, all the leaflets yield no aid. Yeah. And I can hear people in the audience going, oh yeah, on that line in particular, and that really sings true for me for whatever reason, that you are restricted in your bereavement to do or not do certain things, and for that reason that song really stands out for me. I think it's great.
Producers don't get away from this question, by the way.
Well, I'm not in any of the songs, so I can choose any of them. And actually, I think my favourite song, favourite's an odd word, the song I think is most powerful in the show is I Believe, which is the song which Martha's character, the vicar, begins. And what I find sort of most enjoyable as producer, watching this sort of skulking at the back of the auditorium, watching the show and watching the audience kind of react. I always skulk, yeah. And, is that it begins in very much the same as the previous 5 songs, which have all been solo songs by one character. It begins with Liz, the vicar, singing a soliloquy, I believe, about her struggle with faith. And then the moment where it flicks over to Jess's character, who enters on the opposite side of the stage and comes in with another line, I believe, and she believes something completely different. And then it all comes in with different characters, all starting saying, I believe, I wish, I know, I think, words like that. And that comes up to the same point we're saying again, how it's all these people who know something, but actually they're all saying completely different things and having different reactions to their grief and how it shows their faith. And actually, I kind of think that song's a bit of an anthem. There's a bit at the end which cuts into sort of a sort of chorale-like a cappella bit, where they
where you down hands and everyone sings a madrigal style.
Yeah. Yes. And that's all 6 characters. The only time in the show that we have 6-part harmony, they all sing together, and actually, it's almost like all their different bits they've been saying, their different voices come together into kind of one. So I like to think it's kind of a pleading cry to Father God. Yeah. Which is interesting because they're the characters, as I said before, they just a few lines there in the song, they don't believe in God anymore. They know there's no heaven, but then they're left there pleading to God because that's the kind of weird place they're occupying.
And culturally, he's someone to talk to as well, isn't he? Whether or not you believe it, I don't know. I talk to my shaving mirror every morning. He always answers back with exactly the same words. I'm not asking you. You wrote the songs. I will come back to you in a minute.
It's really difficult because I like all of them for different reasons. I don't even know if I have a preference.
Is there one that you wish you could have been singing yourself?
No. I like my favourite song is We Don't Know Anything, which everyone is in, but I'm also in that, so I don't know if I can choose that.
Well, it's a chorus number.
Chorus number, only because I feel like that I feel like that's such an important message. The idea that nobody knows what bereavement is like or what it should be like, and therefore we shouldn't have any expectations of other people going through it, and when we're going through it we shouldn't have any expectations that might make it unnecessarily difficult, but just go with it. I think that's such an important message, because I think of myself when I've lost people close to me, that was an unnecessary burden that I just didn't even think of until actually this musical. Yeah.
Making people think.
Yeah.
Great.
Do you have a favourite song, or is that a very unfair question? Do you love all your babies equally?
Yeah, I think it's funny because actually it's like very much a musical, and so I do think that, I would like everyone to see all the songs, and that's why I'm not, doing it as like a concert or whatever. Like, it's supposed to be in order, and it's supposed to be with these scenes and everything. But the first song I ever wrote was She's Not Always on My Mind, and it's still the one. Even though it's sung as a solo after a sort of bit of dialogue, it's still the one which is the most generic, and it is also another really important message that because you do get these things on TV and everywhere, kind of like, she's always on my mind, everywhere I go she's there, and like, and actually people aren't like that.
Even
and
when you're buying the milk.
Yeah, right, and you do get like really guilty if you don't think about them. But everyone's different, and the person who's died is different. There are some people who find, they get obsessed with the fact that, a friend at school who they don't really know, their mum's died, and then they become really obsessed with it, even though it's not even close to them, and they're always on their mind. And it might not, right, and then it might not even be the other way around. So there's all different. So I think that's really good. And also it's interesting, like, it's similarly with, you can come back to Will's song, Is It Wrong to Have a Wank When Your Mum's Dead? Well, it's still the same idea. Is she always on your mind? Should she always be on your mind? Or is it okay to have fun? Is it okay to watch cartoons? Is it okay to, enjoy sex, etc.? Or should you be like this sort of grief machine? No, everyone's different, that's the answer.
Well, I think everything you've said today has been genuinely interesting and reflects what we were saying earlier. The whole show is all about truth. It's all about honesty.
Great.
So I've got no hesitation in saying that this is definitely a 4-star show as far as I'm concerned. I think it's absolutely cracking. I think it's unpretentious. I think it's honest. And I think it's a delight. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll write that down if it's going to be any good to you. But, thank you so much for bringing it to Edinburgh. Thank you so much for letting us hear it. And thank you so much for your time. It's been fantastic speaking to you all.
Thanks.
Pleasure,
Thank you very much.
Musical talk. Well, that was Bereavement the Musical. Very much a 4-star show, unpretentious, honest and a delight, as I said. And I also recorded on Twitter that it was touching, funny and feeling cabaret based on the exploration of death and those left behind. Rather brilliant. And I stand by those words. Very good show indeed. And you might be interested to know that Jerry Herman's MAME is supposed to be coming to London next year. Something to look forward to there. Bereavement explored death and took various aspects both of death and the period afterwards, particularly for those left behind, and explored them in lots of different ways. It was, as it described itself, a funny little cabaret. And therefore it took a light-hearted view in some areas, a much more serious view in others, and explained and explored and sometimes pushed for effect what it was to be the bereaved. The next show we're going to be talking about took a very different approach, much more narrative in its structure. It was in fact a comedy based around one brother and his 2 sisters, and how the family fault lines and fissures have so much pressure put on them at the wake following a funeral, in this case the funeral of their estranged father, that it causes a massive argument with friends and family at that funeral. Therefore, as you can probably tell, a comedy musical. The show was called Good Grief, and it was on at C. Ecker in Lady Lauriston Road, in case you're interested. And I spoke to the people who were behind it after one of the performances. Good Grief. Musical talk.
I am Stephanie Jane Amies. I wrote the music and the lyrics with Lucy for a show called Good Grief, which is a new musical.
Hello, I'm Lucy, and I am the creator of Good Grief, and I wrote the book and a couple of the lyrics.
So together we have the creative team here.
We do indeed.
Now, briefly explain, just without ruining the plot, but briefly explain the goings-on in Good Grief, the musical, I should say.
Good Grief is about 3 siblings who had no relationship with their father while he was alive.
Estranged absentee father, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. So we open up at the funeral of their father, and it sort of goes into the wake and tells the story of their struggle to sort of to deal. Well, they're not really sure how to handle the fact that he's dead because they never really knew him anyway. So they allow their own personal dramas to kind of get in the way and take over the day rather than thinking about the gravity of the situation, really.
So presumably it's like weddings, funerals are one of those places where families meet whether they want to or not.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to keep down that bubbling resentment that we all have.
It's a very dysfunctional
so,
family.
and indeed resentment is where it starts, isn't it? The boy of the siblings opens with a song about how does one react to an absentee father who walks out on the family when you're only 8. And it sort of takes it from there. Everyone's got their problems, and those problems really drive the plot, don't they? They're splendid.
Yeah.
So how did you get the idea for Good Grief? I hope not from life.
My parents came to see the previews of the show before we left Southampton, and leaving the show they did notice a few...
Observe.
Yeah. A few little things that are reflective of our family get-togethers.
So it is more about family fissures, shall we say, than an actual bereavement that I
very
experience.
much so.
So in a way, that's just that's almost a format in which you can explore the weak points of any family relationship.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And thence lies a tale. So so you had this idea for when did it germinate?
Just after Edinburgh last
All right,
what did you bring up to Edinburgh last year then? Let's start the whole story.
Last year was the first show we came up with from Southampton University, and it was the first show that our musical theatre group decided to bring up. It was a show called Lilia, which I wrote the book, music and lyrics of for my English and music dissertation, because I was a bit insane and did 2. And so I wrote that as my dissertation, and it was never meant to be a Fringe show originally. I just written it, and someone suggested I take it to Fringe, and I did. And it did quite well in terms of the MTM company nominated it for Best Music and Best New Musical last year, and that's where that started. Lucy was the psychologist in my show. It was a show about a rare psychological disorder. A bit dark. Not sure it went down massively well at the Fringe, but some people liked it, so that was a good thing. And so me and Lucy, it was the first time I really met Lucy, bonded very much last year during Edinburgh, 3 weeks of shows and things. So,
you drank the atmosphere.
We drank the atmosphere and more.
And you drank the drink. Yes.
Yeah.
The thing about Edinburgh, I don't know about you, but I find it sort of intoxicating. I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
I only come up for a week or just a bit over every year. I see about 60 shows in 8 days.
It's a big sponge, just absorb everything.
And it's just the best time of the year. So presumably you thought, well, this is good, I'll have another go at that. So you immediately decided that you wanted to do another show.
Pretty much the day we left, or if not before, we're coming
post
back
Edinburgh
next year.
Blues struck pretty hard.
Yeah. And did you have the idea then, just that you wanted to do a show, or did the germination, or did the seed already occur?
Bits of ideas I'd already had. Like I've always written things, but I'd never thought about writing a script before in my life. But having directed, I directed Peter Shaffer's Black Comedy at university last year, and I loved the kind of structure that it's a very short play. It's 1 hour 15 minutes, and it's all just one setting over the space of it is 1 hour and 15 minutes of the characters' lives, and I kind of loved that intimacy. Being able to work with actors that are really like characters. Everybody's got a great character, so I wanted to go down that route, and it was just sort of finding the right theme, the right kind of way to do that. And I think.
So when did it really start to sort of coagulate? Would you say when did you think you started to get a product which a sort of first draft or a workshop? I'm interested in the time scale between initiation and actually putting it on stage, because it frightens me sometimes when people say, "Oh yes, we didn't have anything in the bag until halfway through July, and here we are."
It was all starting to be dreamed up, and I wrote some bits of script and asked Steph, like, these are the bits I've written, and having seen your work, I think we could really do something quite fun together and it could be great. So have a look at these, see what you come up with, have a tinkle on the piano. But I was leaving for Mexico. I've been living in Mexico for the last year.
Good grief.
Yes, indeed. In late September. So we kind of had one session, I think, one night where we actually sat down together.
Piano,
the rest was done over Skype.
Yeah.
Well, the internet's a marvellous thing, isn't it?
Yeah, thank goodness for Skype.
This musical was written over Skype.
Well, the Skype's your limit, isn't it? But,
oh, God.
Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be a long interview. So, obviously it was developing. When would you say that you sort of had your good-ish final draft?
December, January.
Oh, right. Oh, that's quite good, actually.
Yeah.
Beginning of the year.
We cast it.
In December.
We had first round of auditions before Christmas, and we had second round of auditions after Christmas. So we had enough of it to obviously, because for callbacks we wanted them to do scenes and songs from the show. I think we must have had most of it by then.
I think we had pretty much all of it, and what was written from then on, or at least with the script, what was written from then on was quite specifically about who was cast. Also influenced a lot of the writing from then. So the solos we've written, we rewrote a scene and a song about 3 weeks ago, not very long ago.
Yeah.
Oh, but that always happens as you get closer.
Yeah.
You suddenly
Once we
realise,
realise, that's not working.
So when we put it together with the band, we were like, this isn't working. We need to rewrite this
from
shit.
scratch.
So how did the score come to be?
In what sense, sorry?
Well, maybe a better question would be, how would you describe the score? Because it's very harmonic, isn't it? It's there's a song. The songs quite often end with some very good harmonies.
I'm a singer, and I'm not a great pianist. I play piano. I used to be a very good pianist, but then I studied voice, so my piano skills sort of went downhill. So my focus in writing has always been on the voice. Because I very much write. The process when I write is very much simultaneous. I will sit down at a piano and music and lyrics pretty much happen simultaneously. It's a very natural process for me. I don't think about anything I do, it just sort of happens. And you can tell when I sit down and deliberately write a song because it's usually awful. And they're the ones we've rewritten are the ones I tried to write in the first place.
So how do you write a good song? When it's pouring out of you, you're inspired, clearly. How do you inspire yourself to meet the nexus point of a drama or the emotional position? How do you get yourself in that mindset that it can come out, rather than actually saying, right, I'm going to write this song today?
Do you know what? I have no idea. I've never really thought about it.
I think some of the more intimate songs in the show are about the transition coming out of university life and into the real world, which is obviously the transition that Steph has made in the last year. So a lot of those songs were a product of that, kind of the insecurities, the questions and doubts that come out of that.
And there's a lot of uncertainty in the play and the characters as well, isn't it? Particularly at the end, when in fact,
they don't end with any kind of resolution.
No, they're all heading off into new worlds, in fact.
Yeah.
In fact, there's such security as they did have, whether it be failed or weak, unstable, but it has all gone, it's great.
Mm-hmm. So for the emotional one, some of it was quite personal, actually. Especially the last song, that was written at about 3 a.m. in the morning.
3 a.m. in the morning? As opposed to 3 a.m. at night?
Yes, 3 a.m. in the morning.
Quite early.
In the early hours of the morning.
Yeah, the wee small hours, as I believe Sinatra has it.
Yeah, after quite a long, sad day.
Yeah.
So.
And then some of the more upbeat songs, they were written, two of the ones that I wrote were just tongue-in-cheek songs about people I know and don't like very much.
Splendid.
So that's
you changed the names, I hope.
That's where they came from.
There was a
Nothing
change.
Just about.
So, I mean, you came to Edinburgh, and then presumably you discovered that Bereavement the musical is also up here. How did you react to that? That's quite odd, isn't it?
I think it was a funny thing. Someone posted on our Facebook, like our production team thing, like, look, Bereavement the musical, and they're on at C venues as well. Yeah. And there was a choice between sort of crying or laughing, and I think it was just laughing. And I mean, they have a great show. I went to go and see it, and it's a lovely song cycle, but it's so different. So despite obvious similarities, they're such different shows, and it's kind of nice to just...
It's a sort of cabaret musical, isn't it?
It's more of a song cycle,
Yes. Whereas yours is a proper...
story with songs.
Yes. In that sense, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of emphasis on the story in this show, which Bereavement's very different. But 2 great shows, hopefully.
Indeed, yours is predominantly a comedy, though, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
Which is handy to have. It's very cheerful. How have audiences been taking to it?
They laugh,
Well,
which is so
actually,
good.
Yeah. We've only been here since Sunday, so this was only our 5th show, so we came in quite late. But we've had over half full every time.
Jolly good.
Sometimes about 75% in.
Yeah.
And
it's proving a difficult festival this year. Everyone's
saying that.
Yeah, and they said it really quite at the beginning, blaming the Olympics, but there are. You can tell that I've been coming up for years, and you can tell there's fewer people around. And but that also in terms of performers as well, the Mile isn't nearly as crowded as usual. Either of people on stilts painted bright yellow and shouting, "I'm a banana, see me a show," or whatever, as well as audience members.
Yeah.
Yes, they are terrifying. There's plenty of terrifying people.
People on stilts keep almost whacking me in the head. It was very terrifying.
Yeah.
You just got a very unusual stalker.
Oh God!
Not very subtle one.
Yeah. But the aerial view is fantastic.
Yeah.
So people have been taking it very positively, and obviously you have been making some kind of dent.
It's very nerve-wracking when you've written gags and jokes. You write them in your room, and you're like, "That's going to be really funny." And then during rehearsals, the directors weren't really laughing, and I thought, "Oh God, I'm the only person who thinks this is funny." But then the audience laughs when you finally open up on the preview, and I just sat there like, "Yes, they're laughing. This is so good." And
you've hit the mark on that.
Yeah, it's nice to hear people enjoy themselves when they watch it. That's excellent.
So I have to ask this: is it likely to go anywhere else, or is it dead and buried?
Who knows?
I don't know.
Have you a website so people can hear more about it, either for you or your company?
We have a blog at the moment. We're not very technically gifted, but we have a blog that is goodgrief.tumblr.com or something. It's on Tumblr and it's called Good Grief the Musical.
So people can find it if they search for it.
Just Google us.
Yes.
Good Grief the Musical and you'll find us, no problems. But yeah, I don't know where it'll go. We'll see how people receive it. If anyone wants to pick it up and develop it and work with us, that would be lovely. But you never know.
You never know. You absolutely never know.
And we'll probably collaborate again in the
future.
Well,
that was my next question. Is there likely to be a show for next year?
We started talking about it yesterday.
So before the train back, good.
Yeah. We're even living on top of each other. We're in the living room on a sofa bed.
Yeah.
That is traditional, I believe.
Yes, it is.
The rota of the bathroom. Yes, everybody knows.
The most painful sofa beds I think I've ever slept on.
Wood jutting out into our backs every night.
Yeah.
Well, if you're awake, you might as well be at 3 o'clock in the morning. You might as well,
start
talk about
writing.
new shows.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So how can people see Good Grief?
They can come along to CECA. This is what I'm supposed to be saying. Okay, CECA, indeed. The Edinburgh College of Arts at 12:15 p.m. every day other than the 20th. And
to the bitter end?
Yep, to the 27th.
Oh, you are.
To the 27th.
Yeah,
Stay in power till the good.
With smiley faces.
And then will you have a celebratory wake after it's all over? With Pringles and chicken legs?
Probably. More wine than Pringles.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of wine.
There'll be a lot of wine.
But no hash cookies.
No hash cookies.
No hash cookies.
No, cookies maybe. Cookies. But minus the hash.
Well, I'm glad we cleared that up for the authorities. So, I should just reference that isn't just a random statement, that is something from the play, isn't it?
Yes,
it is. Thank you. Yes.
Your witness, Your Honour. So, well, thank you very much for agreeing to talk to me. I wish you great success with Good Grief.
Thank
highly
you very
enjoyable
much.
show.
Cheers.
And
Thank you very
I
much.
look forward to your next presentation.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Musical talk. Well, that was Good Grief. Definitely the funniest and slew of death-based comedies this year. Your first choice for a squabbling family at a funeral musical. But of course death is a very serious business. It is intrinsically so, particularly if you are touched by the death in question. And a truly remarkable musical, a 5-star show about death, was on at the Edinburgh Fringe this year called Some Small Love Story. It actually premiered in Edinburgh last year, but was revived by a brand new company this year. And it was a marvellous, marvellous piece. Very unusual structure for a musical. 4 people, 2 boys, 2 girls, almost telling you stories relating to the characters that they were talking about, in some cases themselves, in some cases other people, and how death related to them. Very strikingly different. And the songs would sort of come in almost unnoticed. Such was the integrity and flow of the piece. A really very remarkable piece of writing. After one of the performances, which left members of the audience in tears, I must say, I got to speak to Brian Hook, one of the producers of the show. He was a lovely man, and he probably still is, in fairness. And this discussion was fabulously fascinating, not just because of the discussion about the show, which is Some Small Love Story, but also because it sheds light on the role of a producer, particularly at Edinburgh. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Brian Hook, one of the producers of Some Small Love Story. Musical talk.
I'm Brian Hook of Hartshorn Hook Productions. The name of the show is Some Small Love Story, and I produce the show.
Now, Some Small Love Story sort of ripple started last year. It came to Edinburgh, I think, first time last year, and it was one of those shows that people were talking about, which is a very splendid thing for new writing.
Yeah.
Before we even started recording, you told me that this, if you like, is not the same production revived, it's a new production. So tell me, how did you get involved?
You're absolutely correct. My original undertaking was we produce a good deal of shows at the Edinburgh Fringe, and it was that word of mouth buzz that you were talking about last year. I was recommended to see the show maybe 5 or 6 times. Given my position, we get recommended to see a good deal of shows, but never 5 or 6 times. And so I thought, okay, I've definitely got to go and see this. And then my business partner, Louis Hartshorn, who's much more kind of musical orientated than I am, came to see it. And he was absolutely stunned. And he said, okay, Brian, you've got to go and see this show. So I went to see it. I think it is the first show I've ever given a standing ovation to.
Really?
Yeah, and I've seen a heck of a lot. And it absolutely blew me away. This year is very much a different incarnation of the piece, but it's still the same script, still the same music, and 2 of the same actors. Both of the females in the show are the same, Serena and Veronica. And I was absolutely fascinated with how the productions come together. It was a very different type of show. I'm sure any of you guys listening that get a chance to see the show will agree. It's kind of a very different format. I won't give too much away, but it's a very different take on musical theatre.
It is that, yes. It's certainly not your standard proscenium arch, chorus, dance.
Yes, absolutely. It's
very book-driven, I think we can say that.
Yeah,
yes.
And it sits somewhere between storytelling world and the new musical theatre world, kind of, but right on the edge of both, I feel. And so we immediately spoke with the writer about our interest. And we work from a very commercial side of the Edinburgh Fringe and just theatre and musicals and music shows in general. And he works very much on the kind of collaborative, collective, new and emerging side. So it was a fusion of very different worlds. And hopefully we have presented something that reflects that kind of fusion and our experiences of the festival and how shows work and his new and dynamic energy. And we still work very closely with Alexander Wright, who is the writer of this, and Gavin Whitworth, the composer, throughout the year. Yes, and then we had a long talk about the creative process and what we would do with it, and then put together a scratch recording in the Lowry, which is nearly the text and the songs that you heard today. And then we brought on Noreen Kershaw, director of Coronation Street and Shameless, to kind of tweak it into the animal that it now is. So a wonderful kind of progression, I think.
Without revealing too much about it, and particularly this version, this production, what really was it that that touched you when you saw it the first time? Why was it so good? Why do you think it had?
Its simplicity. It's stark. The writing is very, very simple and so utterly engaging and moving. And when I'm describing the show to people, I use words like moving, it really is a kind of journey. If I could sing, it would be a wonderful role as an actor. If I looked at it in that way.
It has emotional clarity. I give you absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, forgive me that it's very quickly. People don't. They are playing characters. Your performers, and they're describing in those characters other characters to a degree. But there's no having to develop the characters because of the way you've staged it and the way it's written. It's very unusual, I think, to feel an emotional bond with the story as quickly as you do in this, and then sustain that in these 2 narratives within the text.
Yeah,
I'm trying to be careful here.
No, yeah.
But
yes.
I want to sing its glories too. You see.
Absolutely, I think it's wonderful for a number of reasons. I think the simplicity of the whole thing versus the complexity of the score
Yes.
is fascinating, I think, and utterly engaging. I think that the actors don't act in the same way, certainly in any other musical you will probably ever see from anyone else but the Flanagan Collective and Alexander Wright. He does not present and write work for actors. He writes stories that people embody, I think.
Well, no, that's good. Embodies exactly the word.
Yeah, I hope he would agree with me on that. He might. He's
Otherwise you'll be seeing him in court.
Yes, no, he's a wonderful chap and a very good friend. But yeah, and he's got a very definite way that he sees the production being presented, and it really is wonderful to work with somebody with that kind of directness, and but also open to change and open to trying new things with it. It's been a great journey, really has.
What were the complexities of staging it, though? Apart from the heat of the room, by the way.
Yes, indeed.
It's a slimmer's delight, if I may say.
Yes. The complexities in staging it are, and I don't want to labour it because it is the same complexities that a lot of companies face at the Fringe, whether you've been here for your first year, whether you've been here for your 20th year. Fringe venues, to some extent, are exactly that.
They make do and mend.
Yes, absolutely. It's hot, it's noisy. We have phenomenal actors that deal well in those situations and still present a show of great quality, I hope. So,
well, there was no drop-off in voice, which can happen so easily with a dehydration.
Yeah, absolutely. But then I think one of the wonderful things is we brought on the director, Noreen Kershaw, with the kind of no preconceptions to how we wanted it presented. No normal kind of producer talk of, right, okay, we want to present this production now, you make it happen your way. It was very much an open book. We trusted her with the piece, she trusted us to allow her to present the work, and she'd spoken a couple of times to the writer but never met the writer prior to they'd spoken on the phone but never met them prior to presenting the work in Edinburgh, and they clicked, and they really understood the simplicity straight away. Noreen was all about the simplicity of the work and the text, and getting that the real fluidity between text and song. So at no point do you feel like you're watching one or the other.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's almost in and out of the conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It reminded me a little bit of Jean-Michel Legrand, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, that kind of conversation underscore. It just feeds into one. So it's, in fact, it's almost like verbatim. I mean, it isn't verbatim theatre, but it's got that sense of you're listening to a dialogue first, and it just happens to have songs which are integral to it without being songs. Yeah, almost.
I love the word interwoven for it.
Shall we say that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, and that is credit to everyone. I think with a piece as simple as this, if you change one element at all, the whole show changes, and I'm sure you could see that. So if you change one actor, the whole show changes. If you change the pianist, Joe Griffiths is a wonderful pianist who completely got it from day one. He just understood what his role was, and is much of an actor in the part as any of the performers, to my mind, anyway. And
well, it has to be a symbiosis. There's an empathy between all the performers in whatever role they've got within it.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think
here more than almost anywhere, in fact.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. He kind of, in a piece like this that is so simple and so complex at the very same time, there is no room for a weak link, and there's no room for anything other than delivering on that level. And they've done from day one. We've never had an off night. They've been just delivering that same integrity from day one. So I couldn't be happier with the cast, the creative team, the writers, the composers. It has been a wonderful, wonderful show to work on.
And the audiences have been responding positively. I mean, they were this evening, the performance I've seen.
Yeah, very typical audience this evening. The laughter and the tears so close together makes me feel like we nailed it.
Well, it has recognition all the way through it. Even if you haven't lived the circumstances in which the characters have, you know someone who has, or you have enough empathy in your soul to know if it hasn't happened to you yet, there's a good chance that that particular situation is going to perhaps happen.
Absolutely.
At some stage or another, which is it's also a memento mori, if I
Yeah.
get too sort of poncy about it.
No, please do. I love it.
Poncy and I are good.
Excellent. And I think there is in the same sense of if it hasn't happened to you yet, you can empathise. I think one of the wonderful things in the script that from the second I heard it in the first performance I watched it got me is that one of the stories is set a year in the future. They haven't even met yet. New Year's Eve 2014, and certainly throughout the years that will change, so it is concurrently a year in the future. And so any empathy, all of the empathy you have is for a story that hasn't yet begun. And for me that makes it 10 times more emotional, because at the end you're left watching them walk out and go into this story, whether that's the actors or whether that's the humans, because they're very close together in this.
Also, by having it's clever you do that, because it immediately, not that I think, as I say, I think you engage with it so quickly anyway as an audience member, as an audience, but when somebody says to you, we met a year and a half in advance or whatever, you suddenly hang on a minute, that's not, if you're only listening with 50% of your brain, which you shouldn't be, but even if you are, you suddenly realise that's not right.
Yes.
And suddenly you draw the attention in just by wrong-footing people.
Yeah,
in the best possible kind of intellectual way as well.
Absolutely. And I think the entire creation, what's very important is the entire creation of the piece, from its original conception and definitely in this process as well, has been a collaboration. The actors have had just as much input to the piece as anybody else, as the director, as the writer. Although they're very much their own roles, they make it the show, and certainly the original cast, just have as much credit as these guys do presenting the work, and that's very important.
But your current cast is fabulous.
Yes, they are wonderful, aren't they? And again, two of them are the same. Veronica and Serena have been with us from day one, been with the show since its inception, and hopefully they're still just as close to it, if not closer now.
But this is one of those circumstances where day one is in fact in the past rather than New Year's Eve, or possibly in the week known as Malcolm.
Yes, indeed.
Funny enough, just between you and me, that's the second show I've seen today that's made reference to that awkward period between Christmas and New Year.
Really?
Yes.
Fantastic. It is quite an awkward period.
It is.
Yes. Yeah.
Although I wouldn't wish it away for anyone.
No.
So you've come to Edinburgh with the show.
Yeah, I think the Fringe embodies and really promotes this kind of work, this word of mouth, this you have to come and see this because it's of such integrity. And hopefully I'm not blowing my own trumpet there, because it certainly, as a producer, it is not my work, it's those guys that have created something wonderful, and I just happen to have my name on the door for this production, I truly believe it is a wonderful show.
Now tell me a bit about the company, and do you have a website, either the show or your company?
We certainly do.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are Hartshorn Hook Productions. We've been at the festival now for 5 years in this capacity. We've produced coming up to 50 shows at the Edinburgh Festival.
And you're still smiling.
Yes, still smiling. Still here.
I'm going to pay you the compliment saying you're still young and you've got your hair. So
excellent.
How.
Yes.
No one realises I'm only 13.
A very long paper round. So yes, and it still has its charm. I had the pleasure of looking at the producers' breakfasts at the Fringe office the other day and listening to Lynn Gardner talk very movingly to me personally about why she's still here, and the fact that I believe next year will be her 30th year at the festival. Supporting and writing and developing, really in the mix of it. Absolutely incredible. It really made me. I had to come up afterwards and share my kind of sympathy and respect to that. And they're really, people like that are just amazing to watch from my point of view. We've done 5 years and it feels like a lifetime up here. I'm sure we'll do 5 more. We're a commercial theatrical production company throughout the year. This isn't the only thing we do at the festival. We kind of work.
And you don't
just
do musicals either, do you?
No, we do all sorts of stuff. We've done. We do kind of do music-centric things. I feel, but we're certainly not adverse to doing theatre by any stretch of the imagination, or just as easily as we'll do full-blown musicals. We've done two-man shows, we've done one-man shows, we've done theatre, cabaret, musicals, opera, you name it. We've done it. So and I love that about my job, and being my own boss in that respect. And I run the company with Louis Hartshorn.
Hence the name.
Yeah,
Those are there,
absolutely.
aren't they?
He's a phenomenal human being and a real wonder to work with, and a real force, and and an inspiration to myself personally. And we just bounce off each other and produce shows that we love and work with people that we love, and it's certainly a wonderful position to be in at 24, I'll tell you that for now.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds marvellous. I'll have a slice of that.
Yes, no, it's been fantastic. And I've been very, very lucky, very fortunate to have all the support we've had up to this point, and to have the support within the company from the actors and from the musicians that we work with, and from everyone. I think they really get us, and we really get them, and we have great working relationships.
Taking us back to Some Small Love Story, we've spoken about the audience. What critical reception have you received? I'm about to add to it, by the way. So.
Oh, fantastic! We'll see how that goes. Yes, I think it's been great. We've had really nice reviews. I think the people are kind of immediately enthralled with this production because of the way it sits. It isn't like anything else.
And it is enthralling. That is the exactly correct adjective.
Yes, I do think it is. The reviews have been very kind to the production, and
and rightly so.
Yeah, absolutely, and they've picked out on the things that are unique about the show and that are wonderful about the cast and the score and the director and the pianist and the whole thing. They've been lovely to us, and long may that continue. And it was certainly, I think that if anybody's listening to this and considering their position on it, come down and see for yourself.
Well, I'm about to add to that, if I may, because for me, I'll be very honest, Musical Talk, 5-star show, no doubt, absolutely without a doubt.
Very kind.
Thank you. It's an elegiac masterpiece, and it's a kaleidoscope of subtlety, in my view. Seriously, I mean, I'm not an easily sentimentalised kind of person. I'm an old flit.
Okay.
And it was when touching is such an. It doesn't express enough that it plucks at one's being, shall we say. So no, a cracking show. People, go and see it. Go and see it.
Excellent. I think we've got a wonderful just word. I think somebody completely got it from 3 weeks. Who said core shaking? And for me, the very first time I saw it, that's what it was. It moved me out of my seat. And I've never given anything a standing ovation, and it will be a long time before I give another show. Hopefully not. But I just found myself stood up and applauding and needing to show my appreciation to these people for delivering such an exceptional show. And I do not want to take credit for any of it. It really is these guys that have created everyone that's been involved from Some Small Love Story from day one. It's their show. We've given them a theatre, and they've created something wonderful. And I would be loath to say anything more than that.
You're the loveliest producer I've ever met. I've never heard these words before. I will tell you that yes, you're right, but at the same time that you have also laid the canvas for it to happen. So as a punter and a member of the public, thank you very much.
No trouble at all. And and certainly we're looking at taking the show out. We've got considerable interest across the pond, which is lovely, and certainly within the UK as well. So we'll
be in Leith.
Yes, indeed.
So there is a chance it could go further. It could have wings.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. We will stay behind this production for a good long time now, and we believe in it.
So it's worth repeating that website again, so people can catch it even if they can't see it in Edinburgh.
Yeah, certainly. It's www.hartshornhook.com, which is HARTSHORNHOOK.com.
Splendid. Well, thank you very much for putting on a fantastic show and letting me speak to you about it. I have to say, I've had a marvellous hour, and it feels more important than the hour that was taken.
Yeah, it feels longer, doesn't it? In a very good way.
In the best possible way.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. It feels like a lifetime and 5 minutes. It really is.
It's one of the shows that one will take with one away from Edinburgh.
Thank you very much for your kind words and your support, and for coming down. It's important that we get people down here and see this show and let others know what they think, because to me it's an important production.
Musical talk. Well, that was Brian Hook, the producer of Some Small Love Story, and he was so nice to me and so interesting, so I hope you got a lot out of that discussion, as indeed I did at the time. Some Small Love Story is really just a marvellous show. Another 5-star show available at the Edinburgh Fringe. If you get the chance to see it, do so. It was an elegiac masterpiece with a kaleidoscope of subtlety, as I stated in that interview. And online, on Twitter, at Musical Talk Thos, if you want to follow me, I also stated that it was an intricate, elegiac delight, haunting, intimate and touching, and yet, by illuminating truths, it was monumental. Yes, it was very odd. A small show, a modest show, turned out to touch something absolutely fundamental about what it is to be human. A rare masterpiece. Well, that concludes our look back at Death's representation at the Edinburgh Fringe this year. Of course, the Grim Reaper does turn up briefly in various other shows. I mean, many characters in musicals die. In our pick of the Fringe, Newland, many members of the cast are dispatched, one or two in truly horrible ways. And in next week's episode, I'll be talking about a very modern version of Handel's opera Julius Caesar in Egypt, played like a carry-on film. And of course, being an opera, it doesn't end happily for everybody, particularly for Ptolemy, one of the kings of Egypt. And of course, in real life, death is never ceasing. On the day I'm recording this, the news has been announced of the death of Max Bygraves at 89. Max Bygraves, important in this country, is a very famous singer, but he was also one of the last people to have really made his name in music hall and variety before television took over. So he's one of the last of his kind. And of course, in terms of musical theatre, we've also lost, on the very same day, Hal David, the lyricist who worked so often with Burt Bacharach and was responsible for the Broadway musical of 1968, Promises, Promises, which of course was revived only recently. And so we have him to thank for that show, and of course its never ever failing perennial song, I'll Never Fall in Love Again. So regrettably, the work of the Grim Reaper is never finished. However, sometimes he's given a helping hand. There's a musical on at the National Theatre at the moment, which we've discussed before here on Musical Talk, called London Road, which is really the investigation of a community in Ipswich coming to terms with the fact that one of its members, someone who lived in the street, London Road, was in fact a murderer and responsible for a series of killings, a serial killer, in fact, of prostitutes. And so there can be no show more steeped in death than one that comes from a serial murderer and a series of unnatural deaths. So let's hear from Keith Arrowsmith about the remarkable London Road. And we start first with a song from the score.
Obviously a lot of people going out for the weekend. They're going to be a bit worried. So we're handing out personal alarms to other sort of ladies out shopping today. So that's why we're here.
Everyone is very, very nervous.
Obviously a lot of people going out for the weekend. They're going to be a bit worried. So we're handing out personal alarms to other sort of ladies out shopping today. So that's why we're here.
Everyone is very, very nervous.
Obviously a lot of people going out for the weekend. They're going to be a bit worried. So we're handing out personal alarms to other sort of ladies out shopping today. So that's why we're here. Everyone is very, very
Everyone's very, very nervous. And they had every right to be back in December 2006, when the residents of Ipswich, a small town in rural Suffolk, faced a murderer at large. 5 bodies of female sex workers had been found, and the police were closing in on their killer. This musical, created by Alecky Blythe and Adam Cork, doesn't attempt to address these terrible events head-on. Rather, it takes up the story of some of the people who are caught up in the tragedy. No brutal stabbings on stage, no whodunit revelations, no courtroom confessions. Instead, we see the way the local community, and to a lesser extent the press and the police, who deal with a situation of national importance on their doorstep. Why very, very nervous? Well, when I had the pleasure of meeting Aliki a few weeks ago, she explained to me that every word, hesitation and deviation used in the musical is taken directly from her taped interviews. This gives the piece an openness, an honesty, that makes its subject matter more approachable. It's easier for an audience to share the doubt, the frustrations, the growing community spirit when the characters, Ron and Rosemary, Julie, Alfie, Helen and Gordon, Jan and Tim, Dodge, Terry and June, all express themselves in a seemingly unpolished way. By turning the audience's gaze away from the murders, we never hear from the convicted murderer, Steve Wright, or the victims' families. The piece becomes something that we can all relate to. We could all be living next door to a criminal. We could all be moments away from disaster. But somehow we cope. And the residents of London Road found their way of coping with the police roadblocks and the media intrusion through their neighbourhood watch scheme and their London Road in Bloom competition. It's a show with no obvious love interest, and it doesn't focus on any villain. The residents are appalled by the murders, but they also like a good moan about the lack of response to their earlier complaints about curb crawling and the intrusion of the press. The verbatim technique is not an obvious choice for musicals, but somehow, wonderfully, Adam Cork has found a way of shaping the text and the rhythm of speech to create a soundscape that frames and captures the material in a complex way. Of course, everyday speech doesn't rhyme, and it doesn't fall into consistent metre, but the tone, the mood, the situation allows the music to take shape, often with many voices joining and repeating a phrase to bring a powerful or poignant moment to the fore. Here's a moment from the start of the musical when Ron, played by Nick Holder, sets the scene.
Good evening, welcome. Good evening, welcome. Good evening, welcome. Good evening, welcome, welcome, welcome. Good evening, welcome. Good evening, welcome, welcome. Good evening. This really is our first AGM.
This really is our first AGM.
This really is our first AGM. After we reconstituted in 2006, and then all the awful events happened and we became stronger and stronger. So after our reconstitution, we made a lot of progress in regenerating the streets. We've put new signs up, thanks to Ken. Good evening, welcome. Good evening, welcome. Good evening, welcome. Good evening, welcome, welcome, welcome. Good evening, welcome. Good evening, welcome, welcome. Good evening. Hopefully the problem with the girls has disappeared. We don't see them now. I believe there are still a few round in Hampford Road, but we really can't concern ourselves with it. The street has got much better in this last year. I think that the police have done exceptionally well under exceptional circumstances to clear the streets, as they have done. This really is our first AGM.
This really is our first AGM.
We hear a fragment of the taped interview that scene is based on, right at the beginning of the show, and then the phrase is taken up by the actor on stage, who faithfully reproduces it, warts and all. The cast of 11 had access to the edited tapes of the interviews to make sure they mastered each inflection, each stumble, each hesitation. And having been brought up a few miles away from London Road, I can pay tribute to the cast and their dialect coach, who capture the range of Suffolk accents in a very natural way, despite the fact that they're often singing in 10 parts harmony. So, it's a show about a town most people won't know, about events that we would prefer to forget, that uses a form that could be difficult to handle. How come it's one of the best theatrical events that I've seen? Well, it's a National Theatre production. I first saw it during its first run in the smallest of the National Theatre spaces, the Cottesloe. The NT is a subsidised theatre, so it can afford to take some of these risks. It has access to public money, to sponsorship, and to charitable supporters. The National Theatre uses those resources to allow creative teams time to explore their ideas, often in workshops, and also to allow longer rehearsal periods to develop pieces using a world-class cast and crew. The NT's brought back the production to its largest space, the 1,160-seater Olivia Theatre, and I'm pleased to say I was able to get back to see it in that space, and that the audience was packed. It was standing room only. The vast majority of the original team are reunited, and other than a little extra set and the use of a stage revolve to help with the scene changes, it's exactly the same show. And to my surprise, I found it equally engaging in this larger auditorium. Producers of the world, take note. This is a quality product that deserves and finds an appreciative audience. Second, it features an ensemble cast and band of musicians that are incredibly talented. Go out and buy the National Theatre's cast recording and you'll see what I mean. Third, it's a musical whose form and subject matter suits one another. It's a show where the director, Rufus Norris, and the designer, Katrina Lindsay, have chosen to allow the material to shine. Fourth, it's a show made by people who care. When I met Claire Moore, who plays June, her respect for the material, the verbatim technique, and for those who she represents on stage just was so evident that it was inspiring. She talked about the challenge of tackling such a complex piece and how she felt so close to those that she portrayed. It's also a piece whose gentle humour surprises and delights the audience. Aleki and Adam allow the audience to enjoy the everyday and how we find ways to cope, and ultimately how to find redemption in nothing more than a multi-purpose tea urn and a hanging basket.
Marigolds, petunias, and we got up there. We got busy lizzies, hanging geraniums, all right to see.
There's all sorts in that basket anyway.
Hanging lobelias, petunias in a basket, hanging basket. That's a fuchsia.
There is a special name, I just call them lilies. They're a lily type, there is a special name. And for the first time this year I've got a couple of baskets. Begonias and petunias and impatiens and things.
Marigolds, petunias,
petunias.
we got busy lizzies, hanging lobelias, hanging lobelias, hanging lobelias.
Hanging baskets,
Rhubarb,
variegated ivy in there,
Yeah,
which makes a nice show.
the roses.
And then you've got
done
the
really well.
sky blue,
This is, yeah.
the day.
whatever they
I've
are.
got nearly 17 hash baskets in
Really well.
letters with the sun and shade.
Yeah.
Begonias, scapes and petunias and
Marigolds,
yeah.
for the first time this year, begonias and petunias and impatiens and things. Begonias and and things, impatience and things, impatience.
London Road. Book and lyrics by Alec Blythe. Music and lyrics by Adam Cork. Extracts from the cast recording used with permission. At the National Theatre's Olivia Theatre until later this month.
Musical talk. Well, that was Keith Arrowsmith and London Road, a musical you can currently see in London, ironically, even though it's set in Ipswich. It's on at the National Theatre. Do give it a whirl if you can. Well, that concludes our investigation into the musical adventures of the Grim Reaper. I do hope you found it varied. Next week our theme on Musical Talk will be Mining the Past. We'll be looking at a whole series of musicals, both new and old, which take historic events or historic periods as their backdrop, and sometimes as the focus of their narrative. But for now, it's time to say goodbye. And that means I'm going to. Goodbye. This episode of Musical Talk, presented by Thos Ribbits and Keith Arrowsmith, and edited by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2012, except for the music, where the copyright remains with the creators.
And now for some deathly out-talks.
Now, what I'd like to do, it's for Musical Talk, it's an audio podcast, there's no reason why you would have heard of us, but we've been doing a weekly essay on musical theatre since 2006.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank you, that's kind. We've had some lucky strikes, you know, we've spoken to Stephen Sondheim and some of the greats, so
brilliant.
Jerry Herman, people like that, so I do feel that you're in very good company.
Excellent.
I feel I'm in very good company talking to you. It's exactly what it says on the tin. It is a talk, so it's not going to be a series of set questions. I'll ask you a couple of things, then we'll see where the conversation goes, and we'll take it from there. Is that
fantastic?
Right?
Yeah,
I have to move this episode slightly because I realise I've been to touch my shoulder. No trouble. I hope you don't think that's give me elbow room. I don't know what it does for you. The way I normally start these things, if you're agreeable, is I've got a tiny little screen on there, and that. So I'll be looking at that as well as making eye contact. So
no trouble at all.
That's head,
absolutely fine.
And if you say anything you'd rather you hadn't said, you start libelling your cast or anyone you've met, do say, can we take that out? And I'll be very happy to do this. So, you know, this is edited. I'm not Panorama.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Thos.
Well, I'll start up by asking you your name, the show, and your involvement in the show, and then we'll sort of take it from there, if I may.
Certainly. So,
I normally start is I ask people to give me their name, the name of the show. You'd be amazed the number of people who forget to mention that. Their name, the name of the show, and their role in the show. Is that all right? So I'm going to start from my left and just work round, and then we'll take a conversation. And I will be doing a lot of this. I also do a lot of horrible things when I'm not looking in your eyes to speak, because I've got a little screen here, but that does mean you get to see the top of my bald head in all its in its fantastic glory. It's hot and sweaty and red at the moment, so I'm very much like a tomato on a stick. But I'm not pointing in this. You can take it in turns. And I will cut out gaps so you all sound fluid and marvellous.
Okay.
Sorry. I want to make a joke about a coffin, but there we are. It's going to be difficult for you, I'm sorry. It's going to be a long interview.
Kind of thing. It's really quite complex, and there's lots of things which most people do not think about.
I might have to wait to finish that. Hold that sentence.
Okay.
Please make your way to +2. The houses are open for this evening's performance of Street Choirs. Please make your way to +2. Thank you.
It's all going to get very noisy again, and it's all going to get very quiet again. So.
Okay, right.
Sorry, could you that sentence again? I'm so sorry.
I forgot what I said. Basically, that. Thanks. I think a lot of. I mean, again, another thing is not, which is more known about is the idea that faith, religious convictions really.
Hold on, it's the voice of God. I'm no fool. She's a good woman.
Please take your seats in +2. Thank you.
Right. Yes. No. What
Yes. I normally start by asking people to give me their name, the name of the show, and their involvement in the show.
Okay.
Obviously, that sort of squares it, and then we just take it from there. If, when we're recording, you say something that you rather you hadn't said, so you suddenly realise you've libelled all your friends, or you've offended a very important sponsor, or all of these things can happen. Say, can we take that sentence out? Don't worry, I will be glad to edit that out. This is not an expose.
Thanks.
I'm not from Panorama. And I can ask you just to get a little bit closer, just because to slightly make you. Well, you're still working together, so I hope in a positive way. So that's positive, isn't it? That's very good. And forgive me because I've got a little measure engage on here. I won't always be making eye contact, so you will see the top of my ball.
Absolutely fine.
Sorry, periodically. So we'll just start from there, if I may. Name, show, involvement, same again, and then we'll sort of take it from there.
Yep.
It reminds me in that sense of Jean-Michel Legrand. Will you forgive me a second? Is there any chance we could hold up on the music? Sorry. Thank you very much. That's awfully good. I might say that sentence again if that's okay.
Yeah, very typical performance. Very typical. Try that one again.
A tickleable performance.
Yes, absolutely. No, not quite. Absolutely. A very kind of. I've lost track entirely of what I was going to say. You can lose that bit.
Well, I was talking about memento mori and that sense of if it hasn't happened to you yet.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And
how can people see it? And let's get the logistics out of the way. How can people see it? Where is it?
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, no trouble. The plug.
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, no, we're very good at plugs.
Was that all right for you both?
Brilliant.
Yeah, no,
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed.